What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about Spiral from the Book of Saw. And you guys know I'm a major fan of this franchise. Obviously, life gets ahead of you. We haven't been able to talk about it on this channel as we would like to as of yet. But hopefully, now that things are starting to calm down in real life, maybe we can start making more videos on this, having discussions and talking about what you guys want to talk about when it comes to this franchise. And luckily, one of the things that I've been wanting to do for a very long time is have a couple of other YouTubers and friends on here so we can have a bit of a roundtable discussion when it comes to this franchise that we all love and talk not only about the new movie itself, but also the future of the franchise and whether or not it's going in the right direction. So with that being said, one of the people that I always have on these discussions, please, everyone say hi. Jacob, would you say hi to everyone back?
Good to be back, everyone. It's been a long time, but since October, but we're excited. That started off to be a huge success, I thought, for the channel, but we're always looking forward to this new Saw movie, and that's always fun to discuss. So it's good to be back.
Always. Remember all the way back in 2017, man. Those are some good times. A lot of speculation, discussions, and the retrospective series and everything. Hopefully we'll do more of that, especially after the movie hits. But also joining us today, filling out the round table, is Dallas over at Deadass Serious Reviews. Man, why don't you say hello as well?
What is up, everybody? Happy to talk some Saw with actual horror fans for a change. It's nice.
Yeah, man, that's always such a great thing. It's one of the best things about this channel, really, is having a lot of people come together and have a discussion about things that they truly love and are really excited to talk about, obviously, because you and I were talking about this, Dallas, last night when we were setting up this call, and we were both like agreeing, like one of the best things about having these discussions is in your day-to-day life, you don't really have a whole lot of people who are willing to talk to you in depth about something that you really like a horror movie franchise for one. And you can just go online and find people who have that exact same amount of passion. And I hope the people listening right now understand that and enjoy this conversation that we're about to have, and will also share their thoughts and opinions in the comments section below, which I'm sure we're all going to be looking at. Anyway, with that being said, because I feel like this is going to be a bit of a long conversation, podcast-like topic, let's just jump right in here with Spiral. Now, right now we have a couple of posters, we have a couple of stills from the movie, and we have what a lot of people say is a really awesome trailer. I mean, I've had my doubts about it, but as I've watched it more, as I've gotten more into what they're trying to do, I have to say I'm coming around at least a little bit, and I think I know what they want to do. So I'm going to start us off with one of our 4 questions here, our general thoughts. And as I told you guys at the beginning of our call, one of the things I think they're trying to do with Spiral, it looks like to me, is if y'all remember the first Saw movie, it was these 2 guys in a bathroom having flashbacks within flashbacks to explain games and character motivations and really build the story. But one of the things that they were trying to sell and what made that movie is it's just 2 guys in a bathroom with a very hard choice to make. This movie seems like kind of a recreation of that, but through the perspective of David Tapp's character. We get to see a lot of disjointed games that are being played and people being put through the ringer, but we're focusing on the people trying to solve it instead of focusing on the people going through it at that time. And if that's the case, I think that that's a really interesting shakeup that we've never really seen before, even though the Saw films themselves have spent a lot of time focusing on the procedural elements and cops going after Jigsaw, going into the cops' daily lives and seeing how they go from one crime scene to another and try to put together the pieces isn't something that we've ever really truly explored, unless you're talking about Saw 5 and everything they did was strong, but that was just kind of bare bones in that sense, and it was just a way to give loads of exposition to the audience, and I feel like that's one of the reasons everyone dislikes that part of the franchise. But if that's the thing, if that is the direction, I think I can get behind it. I have more thoughts on it, but I really want to hear everyone else's. So Jacob, I'm going to start with you. What are your general thoughts on the Spiral trailer and just this movie in general?
Well, honestly, I thought the trailer was fine. It was a very interesting to watch because the first, 30 seconds of this movie, you would have no idea that this would be a Saw movie. Because, it's just sit there, you see a movie. Because when I first saw this trailer, I took my fiance, we saw a movie. I forget what movie we saw, but we were sitting in a trailer and she's thinking, oh, this is a new Chris Rock movie. Yeah, this is going to be awesome. Is he a comedy? It's just like Beverly Hills. And I think to myself, oh, you just wait and see. So it's the moment where the Lionsgate and the Twisted Picture logo came up. She looked at me and she's like, really? This is a Saw movie? I just shake my head and goes, yep. So, but yeah, looking back, like I said, the first 30-second trailer, Chris Rock is a cop. I can't remember the last time we seen Chris Rock in a movie in a while. I know he's in the new TV series Fargo, which that'd be fun to watch down the stretch.
Yeah.
But yeah, what really caught my eye on this trailer was, if you're watching it from a perspective of being a Saw fan, you kind of watch all the tidbits and all the clues that it leaves you and all the winks that let you know that it is kind of a Saw movie. Like, for instance, the little subtle winks about the spirals itself on the walls, or like another thing, like, the way it was kind of shot, the kind of grayscale, you can kind of tell this is a Bowsman film in a way.
Not to interrupt, but the slow fading Hello Zepp as it
exactly
as it kind of comes in, like that's a masterclass. Like, that's probably the best part of the trailer, in my opinion.
Exactly, and the little trap at the end and stuff like that. So I thought to myself, as a standard horror movie, if you were just seeing right there, and there's like tons of videos online that people talk about this movie, and they say, "Oh, this looks like a legit fun thriller movie." It's got Sam Jackson and Chris Rock, and I wasn't too thrilled about the movie being called Spiral, but I think I understand why. And it's kind of the same thing we just talked about when we had Jigsaw on last year. Because if you just called it, Saw 8, then people are likely going to check out. It's like, it's the 8th one. It means I got to watch the other 7 to catch up and understand. Where if they just called it Jigsaw, that probably made them an extra, $10 to $15 million. Because like, oh, Jigsaw, must be its own little movie right here. I don't need to watch the other Saw films. Or this one right here, Spiral. It's its own little thriller movie. Chris Rock and Sam Jackson. People, like, if you hadn't seen any of the Saw movies or anything like that, people thought, wow, that actually looks pretty good. That's general opinion. What I think most people have online, or that I've been reading on Twitter or something like that, their general thoughts are, this looks like a pretty good horror movie with Chris Rock and Sam Jackson. They're not really talking about it being a Saw movie. They're really talking about it being an actual horror thriller movie, which, I get, if the studio wants to make money, that's the kind of direction they need to go with and stuff like that. But I wasn't really quite sold on the whole Book of Saw subtitle underneath, like, from the Book of Saw. But, I guess that's one way you could tell people, hey, it's a Saw film. I would have gone with something like, Spirey from, like, say, The Legacy of Saw or something like that. Would that kind of sound with you guys?
Yeah. Dallas, what are your thoughts on that? And also your thoughts on the trailer?
Honestly, so for the title, I'm such a Saw fan that from the get-go I was on board with it. Now that I've had some time to sit with it, now that the fireworks are kind of out of my eyes, I'm like, they could have definitely done something that would have been less like The Emancipation of Harley Quinn, or however that long title went, and made it a little bit more concise. But honestly, I'm open to it. I'm definitely interested to see what is going to become of this, just as a whole, how this edition looked, series altogether. But the trailer, I'm kind of wondering, because of the color schemes that they had. I don't know if anyone else had seen or noticed. Samuel L's seemed to be set in like a kind of like tone, and most of Chris Rock's were in like a sunny kind of orange filter looking. So I'm wondering if they're going to do 2 time frames, or if they do that, if they're going to try and hide it. So if they're going to make it a twist or not,
But let me just pop in with another question from that, though. Is that something we've seen too often in the franchise? Like, if they do that, it's like, oh, are they doing this again? Like, we just saw this in Jigsaw.
Kind of expected. Yeah, exactly. And Jigsaw, they did it in a way that I don't want to say I took offense to as a fan, but I don't like that kind of a retcon where it's like, oh no, there was this whole thing that happened before everything else and somehow never got mentioned at, or they never saw dude's jacket at, you know what I mean? Like, he never left a hint of evidence of himself. So that wasn't like my favorite twist that they've done. But if they do something like that, I'm kind of wondering if that's going to play into the fact that Samuel L. and Chris Rock are father and son. And I'm not even sure if that's something the trailer gave away. That was just me looking up info.
Can I say, like, I wasn't even thinking about that. Not because I wouldn't totally expect them to do that. I just would think that, man, we've seen that so many times before that, like, there's no possible way they could be that dumb. Like, and I don't even want to say like that dumb. I just like there's no way they're going to do that again. That didn't go over very well with Jigsaw.
Yeah, sure. So whatever happens to the other previous 4 movies?
yeah, like that type of stuff. Who knows? Really, who knows? Can I ask you guys this? This is something that I mentioned in my trailer discussion, and 2 things really that I kind of want to. I know I said 4 questions, but I'm going to just, based off the discussion, come up with things I want to ask you. So we talked about this before, Jacob and I, in our retrospective series, and we've discussed it at length when it came to, you were helping me with my Mr. Glass created Jigsaw theory video. And one of the things that we know about the Saw franchise is that where Jigsaw is, everything that happens in the series, we know it's filmed in Toronto. They can't really hide that, especially if they're going outside now, as they did with 7, 8, and now apparently 9. But one of the things they did in this trailer is they gave the New York landscape, which, that's fine. I get it. I believe it's New York. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, one of y'all correct me, and if I'm wrong and y'all don't correct me, then people in the comment section can as well. But
they will correct us.
Yeah, obviously people are going to correct us. That's fine. But look, I'm not sure exactly how I feel about that. And it's not because I don't care about the Saw franchise taking place in New York or something like that. It does kind of take away a little bit of the Anytown USA mystery of this, or mythology of the Saw franchise, if you understand what I mean. Jacob, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting you brought that up because I was online one day on Twitter the other day before when the trailer came out, and you know how Twitter has those little viral marketing campaign things where they have like fake Twitter accounts of fake cities. If you guys go on Twitter, I don't know if this is official or not. Some people like to think it is though. Well, there's 2 accounts. It's called ACPD News, and it's called the Twitter of Angelo City Police Department. And what this is it's just kind of like a marketing campaign where they have like the trailer on there, but it also has like fake campaigns of all the people, it's like saying essentially it's the police department that Chris Rock and Sam Jackson work for, and they just provide fake narratives to kind of build the story. There's one Twitter account just for the news, and there's another Twitter account called the Angelo Tests the Game, and supposedly it's the killer himself, getting things off right here, getting games set off, establishing, dropping off packages like you see in the trailer to the ACPD department and stuff like that. And there's like on the Twitter account, it has a thing on Marcel Nichols' character, online. So it could be like a viral campaign for that. I don't know if it's actually true or not, but if it's actually true, then hats off to, the marketing campaign for actually doing this. So and get people to follow on the game. But yeah, as far as it possibly being New York City, I think it's interesting that you have it taking place in one city, kind of like New York. But at the end of the day, Saw, as we all know, was a very, very contained story and a contained universe. Like the first 7 films were, especially. Like they always kept it very contained, like in a room or like in an area or like one building, and you never really explored. Jigsaw kind of took a direction of hints where it could have been a big city. Like you saw the photos they did and all the landscape shots they did in the movie of it taking place in like in a larger scale city and stuff like that. But now we saw in the trailer right here, within the first second of the trailer, you see it's a full-blown New York scale like city. So I guess that's one way you're trying to branch the city out and see. But then again, if you're going with what this movie's telling us, where this ain't Jigsaw, this is somebody entirely new doing this, then it kind of would make sense to branch you out and explore and go bigger, because whoever this new killer is taking ideas from Jigsaw. It may not even be in the same city. It could be like, a whole different levels. It could be, we're talking like New York and LA kind of style
It's true.
difference. So,
Right.
Dallas, what about you? Do you have any thoughts on that whatsoever?
Yeah, first off, if they are doing like the alternate reality game type stuff like they did with Cloverfield, I'm on board with that. Like I'm going to be looking up those Twitters after this.
yeah, I'll give you links. So,
Yeah, no, definitely. As far as the location, everything like that, I think it might be Boston. That's the city I'm dropping in the hat. But I want to say, like, when it came to the first Saw, Leigh Whannell and James Wan, they were really looking to make a movie on a shoestring budget, so they, put some people in a room.
Yeah.
I feel like the budget is definitely dictating the size of the box this time around. So I mean, with the as it went on, they're making more money. They were able to put more money into it. We started seeing them going outside of the bathroom and then the house, and then by what was it, part 5 or 6, they were out in the city with the cops that we were tooling around with and stuff like that. Now, I definitely feel like it's going to be just out in the open most of the time. Like, we saw there was a trap that took place in a truck. There was one that took place on train tracks. Like, it seems like they're almost going the route that they did with the final chapter, where they had the guys out in public in that box still, but everyone could see it. You know what I mean? I don't know if it'll be that public, like they want people to see it while it's happening. But the fact that it's out in the open like it is, I like the fact that it seems ballsy of the killer to be doing stuff like that.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. And I just kind of bring it up because this is something that the producers have said time and time again, that one of the things that they really loved about the Saw franchise is that it could take place anywhere. And even my interview with David Hackle, he said that one of the things he was a little bit bummed about when it came to Jigsaw, I'm sure he's gotten over this. He worked on the dang film, the new film. But one of the things that he was kind of bummed about is when it came to the Saw family, the people who came back every single year to make the movies when they were making them once every single year, the fact that you're not really going out, you're filming on sets, not on location, and the new films kind of stray away from that. And I get why they're doing it too, because you're trying to make this different. It can't be the same thing. And it kind of goes to my other thoughts on this franchise and this film in particular. The Saw series needs a reason to continue, and it needs a different direction. And one of the biggest selling points, I think, was Spiral. As Jacob has already said, this could be, and rightfully probably should be, somebody completely new to the legacy, someone who's never met John. Dallas, as you were saying earlier, this is somebody who wasn't waiting in the wings for 2 decades and never said one damn thing to anybody, or anything. This is someone new. This is someone who saw John's teachings through maybe the Jigsaw Rules website. That would be cool. Or some other method on the internet or something, or maybe a cop that found the files and everything that they confiscated and
Right.
from the warehouse in Saw 2 and anything they got from any of the other places, like the sick room and all the other stuff. And he figured, oh, this is what John's legacy was, and he kind of takes it, co-ops it, and makes it his own. And because you have a new character that lives in the same world as the original 8 films, doing something completely different, hopefully harking on a socially relevant message that's not too heavy-handed, but easily understood, at least enough that people gravitate towards it, even if they don't understand why. Because I really feel like that's one of the reasons the original Saw film was such a phenomenon of its time, at least the first 3 or 4 or whatever, was because, like it or not, like, oh, politics doesn't belong in horror movies, especially my Saw movies, but like, it did kind of capture this cultural zeitgeist of what are we after 9/11. And I don't want to go there, but I'm just saying, like, that is something that is worth talking about when you look at the evolution of horror after that day, and how horror evolved into kind of a more torture porn situation, and how that was expanded upon, especially in Hostel, and our perception around the world and what people thought of us and how brutal we are as individuals, as the human race, and also Americans as a whole. So that was a gobbledygook of off the cuff thought, but This is
Oh,
something. This is something that I think is really, really interesting about Spiral. Is it has the ability to not only be a part of what we know and love, but unlike Jason and Michael and Freddy and Pinhead, which is crazy because Hellraiser just has so much mythology to it, and they've never really explored that in any of the other movies. This could really be a new evolution of a series that can continue beyond that. I have my problems with it. That to me, as a longtime fan, is incredibly interesting, and it's one of the things that I'm very excited about when it comes to this film releasing in May.
That'd be interesting. Will they drop the ball with it? That remains to be seen, but I trust that, Josh and Pete are still on board, and you got Darren on board with that too, so I doubt they're going to let that fall through the cracks, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
what about you, Dallas? Like, I know that was a lot to take in. What are your thoughts on that?
No, okay. So as far as the, if somebody totally off the cuff, as far as being related to the series, some random cop found evidence of John's or something like that that led him to be like a self-appointed apprentice. I'm all for that. Honestly, I've been waiting for like a cult thing to come out of this ever since like the end of the final chapter when there was like 3 people in pig masks and one of them was Dr. Gordon. I've been waiting for like this movement to catch on where it's like whether people were meaning to fix others with their games or not. Like I was really thinking that this whole thing was going to take off to where people were just going to be putting people in game at like either at will or at random. But I was thinking by this point in the series that there would be at least like more than one person that's going by John's methods and they're employing it for their own purposes, other than like Hoffman. You know what I mean?
right.
And
it could be an interesting idea too, where there are some people that are in this movie that were in the previous movies, but granted they were like super minor characters. I doubt it'll be them. I won't say who though, but like say there may be a clip in that whole church scene you saw in the trailer right there. It could be like a whole Jigsaw Survivor Group reunion or stuff like that. But it could be something like where they had maybe it could have been like a Jigsaw Survivor that took things into his or her way in their own direction. Like he helped me, and then this is how he helped me, and then they realize, oh crap, this person's insane right now. They're taking on this method right here.
Well, yeah, and even just like jumping off of that, we all know that at a certain point, the original ending of Saw 3D, Saw the Final Chapter, or whatever they really want to call it at this point, these helpers, the people who helped Dr. Gordon put Hoffman in the bathroom, the reason they couldn't get rid of that scene, it makes no sense, is because the original ending had a very heavy-handed implication that the people in the survivor group were actually taking up the legacy. Like, as Dr. Gordon was walking out of the bathroom and all of this is like, what the hell is going on and everything, you're cutting back to the survivor group and you go from all of these different people we've seen throughout the entire franchise saying he helped me, he helped me, he helped me, he helped me, and like they're going to continue the legacy, which is such an interesting topic. But I remember very distinctly in 2010 knowing that, seeing that, and being very grateful that they didn't do that, because it would just be so terrible. Like, I think at that point, where we were as a society, that would be just a bad ending. I wanted it to kind of find a way to close the circle. It was ending. Everything is fixed now. Dr. Gordon's out there, but I never really thought that he was going to take up the legacy in any way. And this is kind of the culmination of what John planned, because everything went to hell because of Hoffman. I was comfortable with that. But then Jigsaw came around and the Saw Rules website, and literally 7 years after where we were in 2010, and just a part of me thought, now that makes sense. Now these people finding this stuff online and burying, like, they've tried to bury it, but his legacy has persisted. And someone who has no real meaningful connection to John had such an emotional connection with what he wanted to do and everything, that it would be a very interesting story to at least explore. And I guess that really brings me to my next, kind of a two-parter question. I know I said 4 before we started talking, but because of what this is and how long this discussion is going to be, why don't we just kind of take these both in turn? And those are, is this new direction a good thing in your opinion? Spiral and everything that you've seen thus far. And on that same note, would it have been better to follow in the same direction as Jigsaw in 2017? Now, I just want to put this out there. I do want to hear y'all's thoughts and opinions, and I know Jacob has a bit of a rant to go in with all of this, but as to everything I just said, there was an interesting storyline, I think, that could have been explored over probably 2 sequels after Jigsaw that would have been very interesting, where you have this new character, which, as Dallas already said, would need major legwork in a potential sequel to Jigsaw or a continuation of that story to make it believable that he was there from the beginning and why he dropped off the face of the earth for 10 years and everything that kind of goes into that. But you have a character who is a bona fide apprentice. This guy is the legacy. He's the last remaining piece of the legacy. But butting heads eventually, possibly in a third outing of this partial franchise, you have to deal with someone who's co-opted the legacy, who has nothing to do with it, and essentially just kind of inserts herself, that being Eleanor. And those two individuals eventually butt heads and fight each other in a wicked game that involves the police and bystanders and all this other stuff. I have no story when it comes to that, but to me, it just sounds really interesting because I feel like that is kind of where we are, and I feel as a society, and I feel like even if, as I said earlier, even if you don't know it, there's a lot that would resonate from our day-to-day lives in a story like that. So that's like, I guess it doesn't really answer the questions, but it's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. And I guess off of that, with these 2 questions, Jacob, I know you wanted to do a little bit of a rant here, so I'm going to let you do that. So the new direction, is it a good thing in your opinion? And is it better than what they could have done with Jigsaw 2007?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for allowing me to have this platform. I want to apologize in advance. I may sound like I'm rambling, but there's a point to this, so I want you all to bear with me. Just take a little ride with me, because I'm about to unleash on this company, Lionsgate. So now, before I go off, people, I want to state these are the people that I am not holding at fault here. I'm not holding Chris Rock at fault. I'm not holding Darren Lynn Bousman at fault. I'm not holding Josh and Pete at fault. I'm not even to an extent holding Mark Berg or Markulis at fault, or any of the people who work on this film right here at fault. Here's my issue that I have right here. You have a story movie that you made in 2017, Jigsaw. Whether you agree with the decision afterwards, that's fine. You put your eggs in this basket and you want to go with it. But here's the deal. Chris Rock comes along and he has this great idea, like that he pitches it to Lionsgate. And Lionsgate immediately decides that they are going to go in this new direction, the exact film, and it completely ignore your previous entry. What does that tell me? That tells me that at the end of the day, and this is true for every single movie studio, you could say the same thing about Disney or any other franchise. If you are a fan of the franchise and story and the direction of its characters, they don't care. They don't care about your characters. They don't care about your story. They do not care. The only thing they care about at the end of the day is making money. Now, having said all this, do I fault them for it? No, because you're a studio, you're there to make money. But the issue is this. You establish your universe and your franchise and your characters. And by doing that, you decide to go ahead and create a new story, and then you change your mind within the next one. Having doing that, you completely throw everything that you worked for and accomplished under the bridge. Completely. So, by doing that, you throw away all creative opportunities you have for Matt Passmore. You throw away all creative ideas that you have for Hamill and Emily Anderson. Great actors and great actresses. Josh Stolberg, Pete Goldfinger. I'm sure they had great ideas that they had in mind for future Jigsaw sequels. But for a studio to come in and say, well, we trust your idea, Josh and Pete, and we trust your all's idea, but you didn't make a lot of money. So therefore, Chris Ross got this idea. We're going to go in his direction. You completely do that by saying that this film didn't make money. Now, Jigsaw, it made money. It made over $100 million. It made more money than Saw 6. And yet, I understand when studios are like this and they go on and they say, well, it didn't make a lot of money, so we got to change directions. It didn't work out for us. The same thing could have been said about Saw 6 back in the day. Well, Saw 6, it made $27 million domestically. It didn't make well. So Saw 3D is going to be the last one. By doing this, what happened in Saw 3D? It arguably ended up being the worst film in the franchise. I'm not saying that Spiral is going to be the worst film in the franchise, because you got Chris Rock and Darren Bousman and great creative liberties behind it. I'm sure it's going to be fine. Spiral, I'm pretty sure, people, is going to be fine. Will it be a typical Saw movie? That remains to be seen, because we'll have to see just how connected it is into this franchise. But the point of my rant here is this. You give Josh Stolberg and Pete Goldfinger, you give them the ball. They do well for you. They have a great story. Is Jigsaw perfect? No. Is it one of the best horror movies in the Saw franchise? No. But they at least deserve a chance. They at least deserve an opportunity. And the fact that, they say, well, we're going to throw away the ideas of Matt Passmore. We're going to throw away him and Emily Anderson. We're going to throw away all this concept of a new story in the direction that you just touched upon a while ago. That just ticks you off. I'm sorry, it does. But because, you got all these characters in a simple story and you establish a new universe, to completely abandon it? That's just like a slap in the face to Matt Passmore, to Hamill and Emily Anderson, to Josh Stolberg, to Pete Goldfinger, and to everybody that worked on this last film. It's a complete slap in the face. Will they come back to it down the stretch? That remains to be seen. But if this is it, and I'm not saying, if Spiral fails, then the Saw franchise is dead. We need Spiral to succeed and make a lot of money. Because if it doesn't, then this might be the end of the whole continuous franchise and the direction they want to go with. It could be over. If this movie bombs, which I don't think it will, but if it does, then this could be the end. And we don't want it to end. And for a fact, the studio just get involved and mentally getting their fingernails in and say, well, we like this idea with Chris Rock. We're going to go with him when we're just going to put your stuff off to the side. They may bring these characters back as cameos in these new movies, but for them just to completely abandon the whole story concept and narrative and redirection, reboot, it's just a slap in the face. Now, I know I've ranted on for about 5 minutes on this right here, but at the end of the day, you could say the same thing about any other movie franchise, like Star Wars. I'm not even going to get into what Star Wars did, but do y'all understand why I'm kind of frustrated with this?
Dallas, I want to let you talk, but I want to say I get where you're coming with this. I totally agree. One of the things that you and I have talked about on this channel multiple times is, the initial knee-jerk reaction. One thing that Dallas was even talking about earlier on in this discussion is, Jigsaw wasn't what we wanted it to be. But I've always stood firm with every single time I rewatch it, I like it a little bit better for various reasons. And the problem is it's kind of hard, given everything that they had to do in that movie, to make a compelling story. That's not an excuse, but I would really like to see where they went with it with another film. I feel like they could have had enough time. People could have come back. They could have shaped something where everything starts to make a little bit more sense, and really get to see where these characters go after that would have been really interesting. Now, like you said, Spiral could be good. I think it's going to be good. I think the last thing I really want to say about my opinion in this new direction is I think this is this is their critical darling chance. And it kind of has to be to make it stand out. We've done the nostalgia trip back with Jigsaw. We've done everything else that could be done. This is the We're going to put everything into this film. We're going to make it not need. You don't need to read a handbook to know exactly what's going on in this film like you did with all the other movies, even Jigsaw to a certain extent. And that is, people are going to come in here, they're going to see it, they're going to know at least it's somewhat related to the Saw franchise, but it's going to be a good horror movie, and that's what's going to drive success. Is that going to work? I don't know. I really don't. But that is definitely, at least in my opinion, where they're going with this and how they want it to succeed. And I gotta say, that's an interesting direction, and I can't wait to see what they do with it. But we're just gonna have to wait and see. So Dallas, tell us, what are your thoughts on Jacob's rant? And also, just in general, those two questions. Again, what are your thoughts on this new direction? Is it a good thing? And is it better than what they could have done with Jigsaw?
Well, in response to Jacob, honestly, the way you had said we don't want it to end, unfortunately, sometimes when it keeps going, it's not necessarily how we want it to be. That was kind of the case with Jigsaw for me, just because of the twist. I don't know why that I really had a problem with the fact that we didn't hear anything about the new Jigsaw in any of the other ones. If they could have hinted at it, not knowing that they were going to be making Jigsaw down the road, but if there was just one hint in one of the other movies, it kind of would have gone down better for me. Mm-hmm. But I think in doing this, that it doesn't necessarily negate Jigsaw or any of the elements that it was introduced, or that was introduced in it. But I'm wondering if there's not a way that they can kind of incorporate what was left off in there into a possible sequel of this, or if they possibly incorporated anything in Spiral itself.
I want to go off of that a little bit, because one of the things that struck me as interesting, and Jacob definitely goes into this a little bit more than I do. I don't peruse Reddit or Twitter or the Discord server or anything to see spoilers. I don't really care. I like to speculate. I like to have fun talking about it and talk about like what could possibly be the future of the franchise, sure. But to spoil myself on something that I desperately want to see, I find no passion, no joy in that. Now, people tell me something that I find intriguing, they want to give me that information, I won't really decline ever. But anyway, this is something that I felt was really interesting. While they were filming Spiral in Toronto, I remember Josh posted a picture of Hannah Emily Anderson while they were there, like in Toronto, and I was like, okay, I'm not reading too much into that, but that would be great for me. Like, we talked recently, Jacob, him and I, about maybe a Tobin Bell cameo, which obviously I think a lot of people would love more than just an Eleanor cameo. But I would love that. Like, with Jigsaw Rules, pick up that storyline and have her be in the movie just as a split second, like someone who understands what's going on, give us a little bit more of a time placement, and maybe if it is in one of a different city and this is just kind of off of the Saw legacy, like that would be kind of cool. It's not going to happen, maybe, but it would be really interesting.
Yeah, I was just talking last, like, how do you not put Tobin Bell and Sam Jackson in the scene together?
Right.
I was like, we joked about this. I was like, make it like a simple like post-credit scene where it's like 10 years in the past. Sam Jackson's like in a diner, get Pulp Fiction vibes, him in the diner, and then just up to Barstool. Here comes like Tobin just sitting there ordering tea or something like that, and they just have like a brief 30-second conversation or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and then Samuel L. busts out his wallet to pay, and it's the bad motherfucker from Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, why not?
That would be the kicker. I would love that so much, because he's gonna say, he says it in the trailer, he's gonna say it.
Right.
I get where you're coming from, Dallas, on that. I mean, I understand why people don't like Jigsaw and are fine with them kind of letting that go and focusing more on the story built in the 7 films before that with some completely new direction, especially if it's going to be in another city or these characters are going to be completely new, it's taking place in modern day, whatever they do with that. But I also agree with Jacob that as a fan, I became accustomed to Jigsaw and getting excited about a possible direction that they could take that. And it's not like this is unusual with horror franchises. Obviously, you have things like Halloween, or even like literally all of them, right? Like Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Hellraiser, everything besides probably Chucky. I mean, Chucky goes in more of a comedic direction, but that's been pretty consistent story with its 7 films, a lot of them to direct to DVD, and at least the last 2, and now a new TV show that's going to be jumping off into that. But even that film has a completely rebooted franchise, tentpole blockbuster that they did last year that has nothing to do with it. So that's a little confusing.
I can understand that, the whole timeline, the storyline of Saw is convoluted. It really is. If you really sit back and think about it, it really is. But it's not that hard to follow if you're a really big fan of the franchise. It's not that hard to follow.
That's the point. Nobody's a huge fan of the huge fans of the franchise are going to watch it regardless. I get it.
Yeah, like I said, and I wouldn't have been as sour, like we mentioned this before we came on the air, had, Spiral been, the first movie with, say, Jigsaw never even existed, then this would have been the first movie that they came out with in the first place, then you know what? I won't have been as mad. I've been a lot more excited because, hey, it's something different. It's an actual movie that takes place, 10 years later, and it's got Chris Rock, and it's a different killer. It's a different direction than the Saw franchise, and I could get behind it a little bit more. Yeah. But since Jigsaw came out, within a span of 3 years, they abandoned it completely. So that's just the part that gets me upset.
They've done this before. I mean, other franchises have done this before.
I know, and it was BS then, just like it's BS now.
But to be fair to the Saw franchise, I mean, yes, they have done it before, but they've done it. I mean, they've done it in completely ridiculous ways. We were just talking about before we jumped in on this. Dallas and I were talking about the Halloween franchise. I mean, Halloween 2018 ignores everything. It cherry picks everything that it wants from all the other sequels that it's ignoring and does nothing wholly original with its content. Fight me in the comment section, please. And I'm the guy over here who's telling you, yeah, I'll fight you on this. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is better than Halloween 2018 because at least it's trying to do something new. It's telling a different story with a new Michael, with a bunch of different things that, yes, Halloween 2018 does take and does them worse in my opinion, but that's just me. But Spiral's not trying to do that. It's not trying to purge everything. It's not a legitimate reboot. It's not ignoring everything besides the first 3. Everything that we know so far is it is trying to do something different while not erasing everything that came before. And that's worth celebrating. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be successful doing that. It seems like a lot to juggle, but it's interesting to me, and I can't believe that that's what they're trying to do. And one of the reasons I love this franchise so much is because it takes its own wacky, convoluted, ridiculous mythology, character arcs, and everything completely seriously. And once you start watching, I don't think I've shown this franchise to anyone willing to sit through it, the entire thing, and they walk away going, wow, that's not what I expected. Like, I was expecting nonsense, and this holds up to, it all holds up in the most ridiculous way, but it makes sense. And that's one of the reasons I absolutely love it. But Dallas, do you have any other thoughts on, the new direction as a whole, or one thing that we haven't really even covered? Would doing Jigsaw as a sequel be just a better idea? Thoughts?
Honestly, like I said, if they are able to incorporate anything, like even if it's Eleanor, if they can at least tie Jigsaw into this and then possibly go from here and still have, I'm having trouble remembering the main character from Jigsaw's name, but if they bring him back in the next one, if they bring Logan back, I would be all for it. Like, honestly, it's not in the same story as Jigsaw right now. Isn't the biggest deal for me. It's just it seems like it's just widening the scope of what the Saw universe could be. So, I mean, honestly, as long as they're not trying to say that Jigsaw just didn't happen now, I don't want that. But if they're able to bring it into the fold, like say this does do well, they're going to have a sequel in mind. They probably already do, honestly. But if they can work elements of Jigsaw in that and then kind of weave it together to where it is more connected. This one feels like the first Saw in the sense of where it was more suspense than gore. The trailer itself, I mean, yeah, the traps look pretty gnarly, but I feel like it's going to be more of the suspenseful angle that they had in the first Saw in like 7. So that's what I'm looking forward to, even though it is a different direction as a whole for the series. It definitely feels like it's going back to its roots in a certain.
I completely agree with that. I think that's pretty much the best thing we can all hope for is they take elements from everything. They introduce characters who are still alive into the continuing story, and that way it's a continuation, but at the same time it's something completely new and original, and we don't have to really hinge all of our bets on Tobin Bell anymore, which is one of the things that really dragged down the later sequels. Before we get into our last question, though, Dallas, I want you to talk a little bit about this. I know Jacob's view, we've talked about on this channel a lot. Tobin Bell. Now, what are your thoughts on purging him completely from the series, especially when he's still capable of doing it? Good thing, bad thing? Like, general, what are your thoughts?
That's kind of hard. I mean, it's Tobin Bell. But at the same time, I feel like if they were to put him in one of the later movies, it's going to have a little bit of the Robert De Niro effect from the most recent movie he was in, where he's like curb stomping a guy, but you know that he's an 80-year-old man doing that, even though they de-aged him. You know what I mean?
Oh, I hope they wouldn't de-age him. That would be...
So I mean, that's just why I'm fine if they can, I don't want to say just dead and buried, but mention him here and there, but the fact that he influenced what this is now, to where you don't have to like flashback and we're doing another flashback, you know what I mean? Just so that it feels newer or fresher. I honestly wouldn't be mad if they didn't back.
No, I get that. Jacob, what are your thoughts real quick before we move on to our last part of the discussion?
Yeah, it's tough, like, say, seeing a Saw film without Tobin, but we're at the point right now, people, where I think you and I both mentioned this. As much as we all love Tobin, and don't get me wrong, I love the guy. I was so happy to meet him last year for the first time. He's a sweet guy in person in general. But we're at the point right now where, yeah, there's only so much story you can tell with the John Kramer character than based on the universe you created. Now, is it tough to see him go? Where, yeah, it'd be tough to see him go, and that's what it sounds like this new movie's doing, where they say, a lot of people making rounds, that he's not even in this movie. And that would be pretty gutsy to do a Saw film without Tobin. I am 100% agreement that Tobin deserves his own little swan song movie where you can make, like, say, Saw 10 be like, the final chapter of Tobin Bell or something like that. But at the same time, if you want this new direction, new storyline to continue, we have to get to the point where we gotta let him go, guys.
I agree with the swan song finale. One of the things that I would like to see is a movie that takes place in modern day, not a flashback, but like a movie that takes place in modern day with half of it taking place as an interquel sometime in between, like the 6-month stretch between Saw 1 and 2, or Saw 3 and 4, or 2 and 3, I mean. Well, I guess 2, 3, and 4, depending on the timeline. But regardless, and just trying to explain his character a little bit. There's a lot of stuff that he's talked about that he wants to explore with John Kramer, and I think that there has to be a story out there that would allow you to dive more into John's character and feel more like Saw 2, as an exploration into who he is, why he's doing what he's doing, and more into his backstory and all this other stuff. I get it. He's so well defined at this point that he's not even scary. It's more of a character piece than it is a horror movie franchise at this point. So, trying to do something completely different to that, doing something, as Dallas said, akin to 7, which the first film itself was more like akin to 7. So they're just really trying to go back to basics, and maybe, as I was talking about at the beginning of this video, doing pretty much what they did in the first film, but through Tap's eyes, and seeing that play out. Interesting perspective. I can't wait to see what they do with it. But here is the last question. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because this video is already about an hour long, and it's something that I want to come back to in future discussion videos, because we don't know how Spiral is going to do at the box office. We don't know what this is going to mean for the future of the franchise, both because of the story we don't fully know at this point, and just all the stuff that's kind of swimming around this franchise. There's reports, leaks, rumors that they want to push the Saw franchise into a television show. There's, obviously with this film, they want to do something more akin to probably a new franchise with these stars and continue the story that they're setting up here. And one of the things that Josh has told us, or at least hinted on Twitter, is that he's somewhat, I wouldn't say 99.99999% sure, but he's optimistic that the story set up in Jigsaw is going to continue sometime down the line. So,
Yes.
So what is the future of the franchise? Like, and not just like we this is pie in the sky. What do you want? Because it doesn't have to be realistic. Do you want a sequel to Spiral? Do you want it to continue, like Jacob said, 15 films in the future, or something completely different?
If you had my way, no more police procedurals. That's another thing that got me. I forgot about my little rant right there. They said that Chris Rock's got this new idea, never heard before. It's going to be great. Saw fans are going to love it. You know what? What was Chris Rock's idea? He's a cop in a police procedural in a Saw movie. We have said this for years. Years that we did not want any police procedurals in their sequels. What they do, Saw 2, police procedural. Saw 3, they begin with a police procedural. Saw 4, police procedural. 5, police procedural. 6, 7, it goes on and on and on. Jigsaw, police procedural. Trying to figure out who the killer is. This one, he's a police procedural. We have said this for years. What does it take?
SW.
I know. But having said all that, yeah, it is part of the formula for Saw. But yeah, for me, like, for the future it goes, going back to the thing earlier, yeah, Spiral, if we wanted to do sequel to Jigsaw, I'll be honest with you, if we did say Jigsaw 2, I guarantee you, whatever money Spiral is going to make would have made more than what Jigsaw 2 would have made. It probably would have.
No, yeah.
Because you got Chris Rock, big name, first time seeing a cop in a horror movie, that alone has its fan base. I wouldn't be surprised if this movie made close to $150 million worldwide. I would not be surprised.
I want to jump in there right here, because one of the things that we're seeing right now, of course, we're recording this on March 2nd, 2020, right? It comes out on May 15th. A lot can happen in between then, but one of the things we're seeing now is the outbreak of the coronavirus, timely, is starting to impact movies. Now, Spiral's not the type of movie that needs to make, $200 million plus in order to break even, hopefully. They usually are very good with spending money on these movies, so we're just going to have to wait and see. I would really hope that all of this is cleared up by then, and it will stop affecting literally every single industry in the world, including movies. So I'm not saying it's a factor, right? Like, that could be a factor with how it performs, and it should be at least part of the discussion. But I agree. Jigsaw 2 would have made less money than what Spiral is destined to make. The question is how much Spiral is really going to make.
Just real quick about thoughts on the future. I would love, the Spiral to make it, and then a sequel to Spiral. I would like to see the characters of Jigsaw intertwined with the characters of Spiral for Saw 10. And maybe, like I said, for your next film, if you're going to do a TV show, maybe you can give Tobin his send-off on the TV show or something like that, and then you continue the Spiral in the movies. Spiral could have the movies, but Jigsaw could have the TV show. Like I said, I wouldn't mind. I would love to have a Saw TV show. It's just kind of like The Purge. The Purge got its own TV show. It got 2 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So we could see how that would go. That's where I like to see the future go.
I completely agree. But on that same note, Dallas, what are your thoughts on this? Like, what are your thoughts on the future of the franchise? What would the direction you would really like to see them go in?
Honestly, my thoughts is at this point, traps have been on YouTube since Saw 7 when they were recording the dudes in the box and their girlfriend got sawed in half.
Mm-hmm.
I want a cult, or like I want random people to be making traps, like reverse bear traps for all. I want like Agnes in the bingo hall to be putting little Edith in a trap because she got the blackout bingo bonus or something. Like I want to see it go all out. So that's where I'm hoping it goes. Is just people are doing like shoddy traps. Like these people aren't engineers, So some of them work, some of them don't. Like it's just making this huge mess. Like I just want it to be chaos.
Well, that would be some kind of legacy. Like okay, but like in that sense, it's hard to answer this, obviously, and one of the reasons why this is the last part of the discussion, not something we need to dwell on, at least right now, is would you rather them do like something like Spiral is one iteration of someone taking up the legacy for their own gains, but then we turn it more into an anthology series where this city, like, it's within the legacy, it's the Book of Jigsaw, where this guy does something, and this is just a bottleneck story in the Saw universe, and then the next movie is something completely different with a new cast of characters, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, that type of thing. And that could also be part of a television show, like Jacob was talking about. That's one of the big stories in the Purge TV show, too, is every season's a completely different story following different characters. Like you could do an anthology series like that where every city or this cult or people taking up the legacy, putting people to test and everything being bastardized in that sense, with each season or maybe every single episode, something like that. Like, is that what you're talking about, like general chaos, or do you want to or would you rather general chaos but continue like a solid story structure, this is going to be a trilogy worth of films with these characters?
That's what I was thinking right up until you said anthology, which honestly right now they have the opportunity to make it that because of the fact that Jigsaw was its own thing, Spiral is going to be its own thing. Basically the sequel is going to dictate whether this like an anthology possibility. But if they were to, like, it doesn't have to necessarily be a cult like The Following where all of these people are keeping contact with each other, but just a bunch of random trap incidents are happening around town. But then that opens it up to be a police procedural again, so I'm kind of on the fence there too. But you know what I mean? So it's just kind of open-ended right now because the fact that Jigsaw got left where it is, this is going to be its own self-contained thing as far as we know. So right now, if they were to pick up anything and make a sequel after this, I would want to see them incorporate Jigsaw and this into a blended thing for like part 3, quote unquote.
Yeah, no, you know what? I have to say, I've been thinking about this a long time, and I didn't even think of it like that, where Jigsaw and Spiral are two peas in a pod. Like you just said, like they're both part of different anthology stories, and just because Logan and Eleanor have some connection to John, and maybe this new guy does too, like that's his legacy, that's the Book of Jigsaw, and that could be the direction. I mean, even that kind of brings us all the way back to Jacob's rant about this. I mean, Jacob, what are your thoughts on that? Like that kind of changes my mind a lot. Like it's weird that I've never thought of it like that, but that kind of changes my mind in that sense. If they could do something completely different with each new film and just tell different stories, and they're just like stories in the Saw universe.
So it kind of goes back to the sequel perspective where, Saw 3, 4, and 5, 6 all had different plot points and different thing. The only thing that kept them going was they had the same characters involved with it. Like I said, with Saw 3 through 6, you had Hoffman. Filled the gap.
Yeah, not to interrupt. Like the first 3 are a great example. Like the first 3 are completely different films. But but they tell a unique trilogy because of these characters that are connected. We're talking, and the same thing with the latter films, because you would literally start where the last one ended. But what I'm saying here is like, yeah, like Jigsaw is a story in the Saw universe 10 years after the fact. Spiral is a Saw story universe thing. Might not be the same city as we discussed. Definitely might not. The killer might not really know John, but knows of his legacy and wants to co-opt it for whatever reason. And the next film could be something completely different. I mean, does that? How does that? How does that thought, if it becomes a reality, kind of change your rant? Like, does that make the decision to do Spiral better, or does it still make it annoying to you?
Well, I think it just depends on what Spiral is and how Spiral does with the story it tells. I think it all just depends. But if they were to go in that direction, as long as like we know of it in advance, then yeah, I'm all for it, because you're still trying to establish your own universe. Because Saw has its universe, and as long as like say you present the film like say where it's believable enough to be taking place in the Jigsaw universe, then I'm fine with it. But it's got to be one of those things right there where you got to establish and your universe and stick with the right realm of what you established already with your characters and story and plot line.
Yeah. I mean, now that we've kind of dived into that a little bit, Dallas, do you have any other thoughts on that? It's a very interesting idea that I had never really thought of, honestly, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, honestly, I thought of a lot of that just while we've been talking. I mean, you guys have been making me think about it from different perspectives as well. So I've just been going off of that.
Yeah, yeah. But,
that's a good one. Yeah.
So I'm gonna just throw it out there. Like one of the like I like the idea too of if Spiral is going to be its own series with Chris Rock and Samuel L. Jackson and the characters that it introduced, continuing on into a potential hopeful knock on wood sequel. You know, if that's what they're going to do, and they're not going to go the anthology route, which would at least, you know, based on my initial thoughts, it would be a pretty interesting direction. If they're going to just make it a normal franchise tentpole film, in at least in a horror perspective, then I would love for them to do a television show, and I would, even if it's like a 1 season, 10 episode run, where you would have enough time to tell the 2 stories, finish up the Jigsaw storyline for 2 and 3 that they wanted to do in that television show, where you bring back Tobin, and you bring back Matt Passmore and Hannah Emily Anderson and all these other characters that you can use from that storyline. That would be the best thing. You would have kind of an extended universe of content, and they don't have to really meet up one way or the other, but at least you get that swan song for Tobin, and that is the story you want to tell. If we can't get that, and this is something that I have long since lamented about the Saw franchise, because it feels like so many other horror icons get this treatment one way or the other at some point. If we can't get that, you have enough fans, I think, that you could put out comic books or novelization, continuation, like an extended universe worth of novels. Even if it's like 1 or 2, where we get that same story you would want to tell for Jigsaw 2 and 3, but only hardcore fans could read it or would like to read it or something. It's not the same medium, but I would really like to have that story continued, even if it's not in film form.
Yes, if there was a continuation or like an explanation for earlier events in John's life, I would absolutely do novelizations over a movie where you have to try and convince us that he's not 20 years older than he was when he first shot that stuff, you know?
Yeah, no, of course. Like, yeah.
I would be a fan of that, definitely, yeah. But like I said, you know, there's still a lot of questions that I want answered. It's like, number one question I have: why has no one found the dang bathroom?
I think no one's like that's a whole other discussion. There's a lot of people who say that they have. I'm one of the people who argue that they haven't. We're not going to go into it here, but
yeah.
But Dallas, do you think that they've found the bathroom? I mean, there is, just to put it bluntly, there is that shrine that Eleanor has made in a secret room in her warehouse to the bathroom with the hacksaw. A lot of people say that's the real hacksaw. That's why she hid it in the room, and that kind of confirms that they did find it at least at some point. But I don't know if it goes that far of confirming that. So, what are your thoughts on that, just briefly?
That is a damn good question. I completely forgot she had a hacksaw in there.
It's a blink and you'll miss it, man.
Yeah, I would have to think that I mean, if the hacksaw's there, they at least have found something. Like something from there has gotten out.
Well,
It's Hoffman's apartment. How could they have not have found it? That's my thing.
Okay, well, yeah. If they found it, then that's obviously yeah. But my thought is like Jigsaw Rules is out there. There's all these plans for things that are out there, and somebody obviously has this stuff. And one of the things I would really like for them to explore in any of the continuations of the franchise is these, the big thing with the Saw franchise is they made a point to say that John was watching. And at a certain point, he was unable to watch in person. He was recording it for Zepp in the first film. They have that footage. That's probably made its way online. The entire bathroom trap, right? You have, and that would have given them an inclination of what the hacksaw was, where they didn't have to find the bathroom, but the hacksaw could be replicated in one way or another. But you have them.
Drama.
You have them filming, you have them recording stuff. That stuff is all online, right? Like that's something I really want them to explore sometime down the line, is what happened to all of this footage and recordings that they created to witness the traps.
As far as the memorabilia,
yeah.
Well, no, like the diagrams or the dioramas and stuff like that is really the only other thing that I can think of that would clue them into the fact that there was a bathroom trap if it was never found.
Well, they must know that the bathroom trap was there because Dr. Gordon is not only alive but out in public, and everything that happened in the first film. But yeah, like why wouldn't they have found it yet? I'm not entirely sure. I think based on what we see with Spiral, knock on wood, it would be really cool. It does look like we might go back to the bathroom. Even though they're trying to hide that, there's a lot of inclination that there's a lot of visual cues in the trailer that make it look like we're back to the bathroom.
Right. And there's one little thing. Did you see some of the still photos they had in the magazine?
Yeah.
With or you know what I'm talking about? The one with
there's one in the background, and you see Abby, and you see the furnace, and that kind of goes back. Like, did they just find this? How did they just find this? Or is this taking place after Saw 3D? I mean, is it going to be in the past? And what does that get them? And I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, one of the things I don't know if anyone's talked about this, and I know this has been really long and we're way off topic, but thoughts on this? One of the things that piss people off about Jigsaw, right, is they kept saying 10 years ago, 10 years ago, 10 years ago. And I was like, it's not 10 years ago because of the timeline. It can't be 10 years ago because of the timeline, because if it started in 2000, theoretically it started in 2004, did 3 years go by to make it 2007 by the time Hoffman was out of the picture, right?
Theoretically, but then again, they also said it took 6 months. There were 6 months from
1 to 2.
Yeah, but and there was also 6 months from during 3D.
It had to have been. There was time jumps. I've always argued that it makes sense because there's time jumps in between 1 and 2, 2, and the combination of 3 and 4. And then there had to have been time jumps in 5 because Strom's throat heals up perfectly by the end.
And Hoffman's scar heals up in 3D.
In 3D.
Yeah.
So, yes, there's a lot. There's definitely time jumps that aren't like highlighted for you. Like you have to, like obviously they're there, but they're not telling you. They're not showing you a calendar go by or anything like that. So it makes sense that it's in 2007. I think I really do think that Pete and Josh thought that through, and that's why they said that. Like that was one of the things that made Jigsaw stand out to me. They obviously looked at it very hard, but could this be set in 2007? Could Spiral be set in 2007, and that's when they find all of this stuff?
Oh, are they going to pull a Final Destination 5?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible.
Surprisingly set in the past, like you don't know it until the end.
But that goes back to, like, literally the first thing you said on this, man. Like, you don't want that. Like, you don't want another time twist. Like,
I think the way they execute it could be a factor. Like, I mean, if it is Saw, there is bound to be at least one flashback in it. But I mean, if that's going to be their twist and they do it well, I won't be mad.
Yeah, like for instance, Sam Jackson's in the Tobin Bell timeline, and Chris Rock's in the Jigsaw timeline.
Nowadays, yes,
yeah,
like I'd be cool with that. That's what I was saying earlier. Is like the color cues makes me think that Samuel L. is in the past because his color scheme is all blue.
Yeah,
and then Chris Rock's is all like bright and sunny orange.
There has to be a flashback with Samuel L. Jackson because he was wearing like a mustache during once thing behind the scenes. Like they did this on filming where Josh posted he had a photo of Sam Jackson like wearing a mustache, and then you see in the trailer he has no mustache. So there could be some time jumps in that movie, but we'll see.
Sure. Who knows? Either way, this has been much longer than what I anticipated, and I've had a whole lot of fun. You know, one of the things that I really like doing these discussions, or at least one of the reasons I do, is because it gets me more excited for it than I would have otherwise been. I mean, because you can read all the stories that come out, and you can watch all the content and everything, but you get a chance to sit down and talk with people about it and share ideas and think about things that you hadn't really thought about in that way or this way. You get a little bit more excited, and that's one of the things I really hope to do with this franchise and this film going down the line is when it comes out, we can come back together, we can talk about it, we can rewatch it, we can do that retrospective that we need to do for the entire for it to kind of keep up with the rest of the series. And I think, like Jigsaw, regardless of what I feel like after my initial viewing, I think I'm going to come away with a very good opinion of it, and I'm excited for that. But with that being said, guys, closing words, closing thoughts on this entire discussion, or any general excitement for the film going, or any general excitement for the film. Let's start with Dallas, and then Jacob, and then we'll just kind of leave it at that.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see what story it is that Chris Rock had in mind that derailed the possible franchise potential that Jigsaw had set up.
No, yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if it's going to be a knock out of the park or what. And kind of going back to the feelings of the movies, like if this is going to be a new trilogy, then Spiral definitely seems like it's got the feel of Saw 1, where Jigsaw had the multiple people in a house potential that Saw 2 had. So if they are going to kind of harken back to that trilogy, I'm excited to see what they come up with for the third part of this possible trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, I salute everybody that's stuck with us this long. So everybody deserves
a lot of them.
Go buy yourself a drink or get yourself a cookie. I'm going to go get me a cookie before I go to bed. But yeah, like I said, after this long conversation, maybe we realize, holy crap, guys, we have an actual new Saw movie coming out in 2 months. That's all.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's something to get excited about again. And like I said, even though the fan base may look like it's down, it's still out there. But hey, for fans of the franchise, to keep chatting along, 15 years later since the first one came out, it's good. It's good to talk back on. It's good to see, a franchise like this can keep people up and about and excited again to be invested in it. So 2 months, guys, count down.
Hell yeah, can't wait.
Anyway, guys, we're going to leave it at that. Hope you've enjoyed the discussion. I know I have. Don't forget to like and comment onto this video. You can subscribe to this channel if you want more discussions on Saw-related content. As always, Jacob's links to his various things will be down in the description section below. But different this time around is that also Dallas's will be as well. Go check out his YouTube channel as well as his Twitter account if you want someone to talk to about Saw horror related content or anything else. Hope everyone's having a fantastic day. It's been real.